Hi, I'm Don McCulley.
And I'm Andrew Kuykendall. Welcome to another episode of This Stuff is Complicated, where we try to break down medical captive stop loss into plain English.
Good luck with that one. What's up with the t-shirt today?
Mahali.
Oh, yeah?
I first came across Mahali as the lead singer for Twiddle, but since that band has gone on a relatively permanent hiatus...
That would be an understatement.
He is traveling solo and put out an incredibly beautiful album at the end of the pandemic called Breathe and Let Go. And it was dealing quite a lot with the unexpected highs and the unexpected lows of life and how to maintain some consistency.
Kind of like Twiddle had some highs and lows. But what we're going to talk about with the highs and lows and unexpected consistency is two different types of stop-loss group captives, win-lose and Pro Rata. We market and sell a Pro Rata program where everybody has kind of the same skin in the game. And really, the impact of the law of large numbers is heightened in a Pro Rata program. And from my perspective, in a win-lose program, the employer's more standing on its own. So the purpose of the group captive, when we started it, we called them shock absorbers back then, you remember in 2010? Mm-hmm. And the shock absorber was to balance you out in a big claim. But in a win-lose program, which we'll describe in a little bit more detail, that seems to isolate the member more into a on their own, and the law of large numbers doesn't kick until later.
And one of the things that we talk about most often with people who are transitioning from fully insured into a stop-loss captive is that law of large numbers. Instead of being 100 lives out of 100, you're 100 lives out of 10,000. Not everybody's going to have a great year. Not everybody's going to have a horrible year. But at the end of the day, each individual is a data point. The more data points we have, the more accurate we can be with trying to find the right solution and the right funding.
Yeah, so to talk about win-lose, let me go back to my workers' compensation days. So we wrote a hierarchy on how claims were paid. And it basically said the employer pays the first tranche of claims, and then there's their collateral comes into play, and then there's a shared tranche of claims, and then reinsurance kicks in. So there were like 4 different ways to have the claim paid. In our standard program, Clear Captive, it's pro rata. Claims are paid on a pro rata basis. If all the premiums used for claims, then collateral gets used on a pro rata basis. And if that gets used up, then we go into reinsurance. In a win-lose, as I understand it, because I've never read their documents, so this is kind of somewhat conjecture, right? Not perfect. We know that there's a assessment on top of collateral. So when they have a bad year, it's worse than our maximum liability or even their possible maximum liability, because I don't know. Do you know how the assessment's calculated?
It's going to depend program to program.
Okay.
Much like the pro rata will depend program to program.
Right.
And we've seen both sides of this. Within Clear Captive, we've had member companies have incredible years of very minimal claims and still have to help participate to, take off the highest of the highs to fill in the lowest of the lows. But the following year, that company may have a very difficult year as it relates to large claims, and then they are benefiting from being in the captive on a pro rata space. To your point in win-loss, you really want to be careful to understand when the loss starts. The win's pretty self-apparent, but historically it used to be, 1 out of every 5, 2 out of every 7 years you would expect to be above that line and finding yourself in a tougher claims position.
Well, and going back to your point about a 10,000 life group is credible, when we started in the space, 1,000 life group was credible, right? And we said, well, if we had 10 100 life groups, we could create that credibility. Well, if you go to 25 40 life groups or 40 25 life groups, they're never credible. So that goes to win-lose. You're taking away the credibility portion of the underwriting on renewal. So people stand on their own more in renewal, and they stand on their own more in claims, where we have a equal amount, a pro rata share. Everyone pays the same amount of collateral in and same amount of skin in the game. So what we said was, some years you're going to be ahead of the game, some years you're going to be behind the game, you're going to be a net user of premium or a net funder of premium. But at the end of the day, it's designed to help you get the lowest overall cost each and every year and smooth out those renewals, because medical inflation is not fair. In fact, it's not even like regular inflation. It's that thing that, we get into fights over about that leverage trend thing, which is so complicated for the average consumer. We won't go into that, but we know what the impact is on our book and everyone else's book. And so in win-lose, are you even using leverage trend is benefiting from the law of large numbers?
There is absolutely a deeper discussion to be had on that, but I think it comes down to risk tolerance as much as anything else. If you are willing to accept those very difficult years on a standalone basis,
Right.
in order to recoup on those below average or below expected claims years on basis. Not everybody has risk tolerance, and let's be honest, not everybody has the cash flow to be able to try that year after year after year after year, which is why we have this whole spectrum of products across the platforms.
Sure. So the ERISA concerns are equal in pro rata and in win-lose, because at the end of the day, both are designed to provide the lowest overall cost. And throw out the bad year and the ERISA concerns, because at the end of the day, it was just a bad year. But we are really talking about three things here today in this comparison of pro rata versus win-lose. One is, does the law of large numbers impact both programs? It does, but not equal. And then collateral and assessments. One has collateral, the other has collateral and assessments, but they both align with ERISA. They both provide the lowest overall cost. And that's really what we want to talk about, is kind of what works for your employer. Because as you like to say, and I've now adopted, if you've seen one stop-loss captive program, you've seen one stop-loss captive program. So I'm Don McCulley.
And I'm Andrew Kuykendall. Thanks for joining us on This Stuff is Complicated.